Once upon a time, in a land of potlucks and prayer chains, there lived two wary souls. We'll call them Pilgrim and Pilgrimette because it sounds biblical, and frankly, we like the alteration. They were faithful travelers on a narrow path, a road paved with guilt, shame, and the occasional casserole. Armed with the sword of truth, which turned out to be more of a butter knife, and the shield of faith that barely held up against Facebook comment wars, they pressed on. Their goal? The celestial city, where all their questions would finally be answered. Questions like, why is God so concerned about tattoos? And who thought felt banners were a good idea? But along the way, something strange happened. They wandered into the forest of doubt. At first, they tried to escape, clutching their Bible verse flashcards like a lifeline, but the trees whispered. Questions they couldn't unhear. What if you're wrong? What if hell's just a marketing strategy? And why does everyone in heaven sound so smug? So they abandoned the narrow path and set out on a new journey, one that didn't include Sunday suits or awkward altar calls. It wasn't easy. They braved the desert of disapproving family dinners and fought off the apologetic trolls guarding the bridge of unsolicited advice. And now, here they are, still walking, still questioning, and still wondering why the Celestial City has so many HOA rules. Today, we are joined by our friend, Katie, who has her own wild journey through faith, spirituality, and learning how to dodge metaphorical stones. So let's get into it on Drop the Stones.
Hi, I'm Candy.
And I'm Dan.
And you're listening to Drop the Stones,
a weekly podcast brought to you by Christian Literature. What more is there in life than listening to and reading Christian literature to get you proved into the celestial city? And today we have one of our friends on today, Katie. Katie, how are you doing today?
I am doing so good. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, love to have you. We love bringing people on that just are on the journey somewhere and just sharing different things we've seen and done and kind of helping each other out along the way to figure this whole thing out and how it got so off the rails with the church system in the original thing. So with that being said, why don't you fill in our guest a little bit about your background, just whatever you want to share, where you come from, where you're going, how everything is. So
Happy to. Well, I've been looking forward to tonight's conversation because I feel like I'm going to learn a lot about my current beliefs and figure a lot of things out myself as we process this together. So thank you for the invitation to share here. I feel new on this whole, like, I'm not a Christian anymore journey, and it has felt like a journey. So I was raised a Christian, grew up in conservative central Minnesota, evangelical all the way. And I did a gap year called the Honor Academy with Teen Mania Ministries right after high school. So I spent 3 years in Texas, which is where I now live, Dallas, Texas. And I went to the internship to grow closer to God and establish my foundation in the Christian faith, because they say that if you're still a Christian, like by college, you'll definitely like lose your faith through college. So, oh my gosh, we don't want that. We don't want to lose our faith. We don't want to not be Christians. And so we need a firm foundation before we go into the world where we're more likely to lose our faith and all the things. Mm-hmm. So I did that out of high school and moved back home. I felt like my time was complete with the internship in 2011. And was still a Christian, was still a super good girl, and knew right from wrong and did my best to do all the right things. And so when I found myself in a relationship with a guy who was married to somebody who was not me, and making out with this guy, and then finding myself to be pregnant, I was like, OMG, this is not me. This is not what I do. Like, this is not who I am. I'm not a bad person. I don't sin like this. Like, how could I have done this? So in my mind, I needed to be good. I needed to be right. And that this answer to me to do that was to have an abortion. Like two wrongs make a right, right? So I needed to fix this. I needed to like fix this mess and right all my wrongs because I was so bad and wrong for all the things that I had done to be pregnant. Oh my gosh. And I wanted nobody to find out. I was like my worst nightmare. I was mortified for anybody, like my parents, my church, my community, everybody in my life, my intern, like schoolmates that I just made friends with for 3 years, like everybody in my life. So I was mortified. Anyway, so went through with the abortion and pretended like it never happened. That was my goal, to pretend like it never happened and not tell a single soul. So the only thing that changed was I got on birth control and stayed in that relationship for another 7 years.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, after that, I was like, I had tried to end it several times to no avail. So I just got to a point after the abortion, after being like, I don't want this. I don't want to be stuck in a relationship with somebody who's married to somebody else. Like, I don't want this and it's not ending. So I decided the way to end it was to move. So I sold my house. I sold everything I owned except for my cat. I brought my cat with me to Dallas, Texas, and thought like I need to start my life over again. Like I didn't want to be associated with those people and like that life and everything in Minnesota. And I wanted to be a life coach. And I thought that was never going to happen out in the sticks of central Minnesota. But so I just wanted to start my life over and grow my life coaching practice. So Dallas was like my home away from home. And that was far enough for my partner to not be able to just like drive and see me on the weekend or see me at all.
Yeah, that's a good journey.
It's been like 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was 2018. So I moved in 2018 to start my life over, and a year went by of being done with my ex and living my life and starting over, and I met my now husband. So I met my husband after about a year of living in Texas, and that's a whole story in and of itself. But we don't have any kids together, and I have my coaching practice now, and now I serve women who have had an abortion. I like to help them overcome the emotions and all of the thoughts and all of the stigma that comes with having an abortion. And so I was a Christian up until last August, I would say, is when I was like, I am not a Christian anymore. Like I had just learned so much in my effort to be the best life coach that I can be to serve my women. I just got to a point where I was like, Christianity is not the way, not the means that I want to serve my women through. And I thought like to be a Christian is the way, and what Christianity thought Jesus was and taught like who Jesus was. That's the way, and that's the only way, and that's the right way. And that's how women are going to get healed. And they need to know that like God hates murder and abortion is murder. Like that's how, like all these things. But then as the more I learned, like in the self-development world, and just one thing led to another. I think I had shared that in a TikTok video. I just felt like it was inevitable that I was going to decide to not be a Christian anymore with the growth that I had been on and the learning, the path that I had been on. I was like, at some point, it makes sense that I would not be a Christian anymore. And that happened last August.
Wow. Wow.
So was there a flashpoint that really just kind of set everything off for you, or was it just kind of a gradual erosion of beliefs over your practice, just kind of chipping away at it or something there?
Kind of like both, yes. So the gradual part was in my mind, learning things that made sense. Take like Joe Dispenza. I consumed his material for a couple years. Makes sense. It's scientific. It's research. There's evidence. Like it seems really logical, but stuff like Joe Dispenza and stuff in the self-help world, I can't even think like I don't know, you just hear so much. And when it all matches and fits together, and you're like, yes, that checks out. Yes, that makes sense. They said this and they said that in a different way, and that all matches. So that was the gradual part. But I started listening to Conversations with God like back in August, September, October, in that time frame. And that was like the instant,
what
yep,
started it.
that's it. Like I'm not a Christian anymore based on what I had heard. And there's like 3 books on YouTube and they're like 8 hours to listen to because who has time to read? So I was listening to this and over like a couple weeks, I just could not get enough. I was listening like every spare second of every day. I could not get enough. I could not put it down. I couldn't stop. I was like, oh my gosh, this is blowing my mind. I've never heard this before. This makes so much sense. I'm like, I cannot be a Christian. Like that makes more sense than what Christianity taught me and indoctrinated me to believe. And I am ready to be done with that. It was just like, nope, I'm done. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a few things in that story. I mean, just thinking how you reconciled just abortion and Christianity and trying to bring women through that, where they shouldn't have, neither should the two roads cross at any point or time because of the Christian faith. That's taboo. That's horrible. Don't
guilt and shame and sin.
All that put on there, and then you're trying to help people through that. Which,
well, as a coach, if you're a Christian, that is what you would use as a Christian is shame and guilt to get them to realize this was a really bad thing you did. But you would already see that they are suffering from guilt and shame. And to layer that on top probably felt like, no, this can't be the way to do this.
Yeah, but that would be the cost of the sin that they committed. So that guilt and shame is justifiable because you did this action. And, I can it's just tough to wrangle how you did that, through a Christian faith and still tried to support.
Well, she didn't. It was unraveling her Christian faith that she was doing it.
Like it makes sense. If you're a Christian, all of that makes sense and can like be a model that you work with. And women do find hope and healing through that model. But to me, that's not the truth. And that's not the message that I want to preach or the model. That's not what I'm projecting. You're a sinner. You need to ask forgiveness. Like you offended God. Like no. You can find hope and healing and find like people do. That's not what I stand for anymore.
Yep. Definitely.
We'd agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's kind of similar to our journey where it was kind of a slow. And it was funny, and what me and Candy deconstructed, we were both doing it separately, but not communicating it to each other because we both felt like this could be the end of the relationship. If one of us were to come out and be like, I don't know if I believe this anymore, at least the way it's being taught. But there was a time where she was going through a study in Revelations and learned about preterism, that the revelation occurred already in 70 AD. And I remember clearly she's at the kitchen table sitting there going, I don't know if I believe this anymore. And I had already been going through on a different road of there's something wrong with this system. I don't see the need for these extravagant buildings and all this money and everything else going through. Something's not adding up in my mind with how this thing is operating and proceeding to go on in the world. So when she said that, I'm like, okay, say less, let's go. What do you have here? So, and then we kind of came together through that and we started discovering everything, but it was this slow thing kind of leading up to it for both of us. And that was kind of a flashpoint with her studying Revelation and understanding that a lot of it was more historical than prophetical, in how that book was translated. And so, yeah, similar journey. And there was a slow erosion, but then boom, right here was the
Yeah, there's a point where it starts, I think. And for me, it was revelation, just looking at it different. Well, actually, for me, it was just a prayer that said, I don't care what the truth is. I just want to know what it is. I'm so tired of like not understanding this stuff. And it's contradictory and trying to hold these things together at the same time. It's just something's wrong. And that was the catalyst. And then it is once one belief tumbles, it's like, well, then what about this one? Because they're connected to each other.
Yes.
And then that one goes, and then another one goes, and it just keeps going.
Yeah, I had heard about deconstruction and people like deconstructing, and as a Christian, I was like, I'm never going to deconstruct. Like, why? What is all that about? I don't even want to know what that's about. And when I decided to not be a Christian anymore, it was at first I was like, well, I just don't believe these things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just a belief. It's like one day it's yes, the other day it's no. But then I was like, well, then what did Jesus die for? If he didn't die for our sins, like what does, and I started asking more questions and I was like, okay, I guess that's what the deconstructing is. It's like,
I guess
how does this all
it.
make sense? And you're right.
Yeah.
It's all like when one domino falls, they all topple and you got to like figure it all out. Well, then what does that mean? And what about that?
Yeah.
And what about this? And I guess like at one point I felt like, oh my God, this feels like betrayal or something. Like nobody betrayed me. I just felt like I was, I guess, brainwashed or indoctrinated. And I didn't see that. I didn't realize that. It's almost like a cult. Like, oh my God, was I in a cult?
Definitely.
I never knew that.
No, we would look at others and say they were in cults. Never would I have, because I was evangelical, born and raised in it. And I would have never said we were in a cult. Now I look back and I'm like, that's a cult.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said it while I was in it. Yeah. So I'm wondering if people like in cults that we would have called cults, like Jim Jones or whatever, can they not see that they're in a cult?
No, they can't.
That's just so weird. And I guess
and that's
when you're born and raised in it, though, you don't have a say. You're programmed from a child, and then you get to an age where I am interested in you talking about deconstruction, like, because we began before there was a word. There was no word for it. And I went to Instagram because we had I was in a women's Bible study, and there was a couple women that did kind of go along the journey with me. But there was like nobody to talk to outside of that. Like my family, they totally rejected it. So I went to Instagram and started like sharing some of my ideas, and I saw, oh, there's other people. And then the word deconstruction began to take shape somewhere in there, and maybe a year in. So it's interesting for you to say, so were they talking about it from the pulpit, like saying it was a bad thing, or did they not really talk about it, it's not something you decide to go down. You just find yourself on it,
Right. Oh yeah. I can totally relate to that, feeling like I'm never going to not be a Christian. Like, so when I decided to not be a Christian, I feel like I wasn't looking to not be a Christian. I felt like it just came to me.
Yes.
I had no reason I wasn't upset at the church. I wasn't like spiritually abused. Like I wasn't mad at Christianity or Christians, or I had no reason to leave.
Yeah.
But once I found the truth, once I like learned things that Christianity didn't teach that made more sense than Christianity, I was like, that's for me, not that. I'm ready to be done. Like this felt more pure, felt more real. It just like you feel it in your soul, in your spirit.
Yes.
You know that this is more accurate or true, real, right, all the things.
Yeah.
But I think deconstruction got really popular over COVID. I don't know, like just recently maybe. Yeah. So I think I was seeing it on social media, or it got popular and people were talking about it. I don't think I ever heard about it in church or in a church setting, but it was on the internet for sure.
Okay. So it was when it was just popping up for all of us. And I was like, there's a word for it. Because we didn't know
you just lost the faith.
Yes. Kind of like, but I still believe, I was holding on to it. I believed very differently than any Christian, but I still held to it. I struggled with the word Christian. I would just say, I'm a believer. I would say that for a while. And then it just kind of morphed into what it is now, which is, I have no
I feel like a separatist. Like, I don't want to label.
Yeah.
It's not about being labeled something.
Exactly.
I love
Exactly.
that. That's it.
No labels.
So, because, I think COVID was right, because that's when, you look at the charts of church attendance, and it's kind of 2016 it started to decline, and then 2020 it just went like that. And I think a lot of that was people weren't in churches, so they were searching for stuff, and they were finding, kind of like you said, you just are looking and you find some different truths that, well, wait a minute, that doesn't match up to what I was being told. Let me look into this rabbit hole for a minute. And the next thing you know, you're down it. And you're like, wait a minute, this actually logically fits. I don't have to just give it over to God.
Yeah.
God works in mysterious ways. So that's why that happens that way, type thing. So I think, that was, the internet's the enemy of the church.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Candy, because you mentioned like how we're raised this way and we were just taught this from such a young age. And I think I was talking with somebody on TikTok. They were feeling guilty, like feeling so dumb for believing this. I'm like, kind of like don't feel dumb, because this is just how we were raised. Like, you wouldn't tell a child like, you're so dumb for believing that. Like, that's what they were told. Like, they didn't know any different. We were young and vulnerable and susceptible and innocent and learning. And so as an adult, it doesn't pay to be like, oh my God, how could I be so stupid? Like, that doesn't help.
No, that just adds a layer of shame, but it also makes you feel like you're stupid, and you're not stupid. And I'm a therapist, so we've studied all the subconscious, how that happens. Those younger years, it is amazing that any of us actually get out of it, because we were so programmed as children. That a lot of times that's life. As you can see, most people stick with it. But so to break free from it and actually go and be willing to do all the shadow work that you have to look at yourself. You have to, without judgment, go, yeah, that's what I think. That's what I've done, without having that judgment. Now you can actually look at it and go, but that's not me. That's not something I want to be a part of anymore, or whatever, and I know a lot of people say they want to apologize for everything they did, which I understand that, because, there was times I was like preaching Jesus pretty hard at somebody, because I think a lot of people who deconstruct were the most fervent Christians.
Yeah.
It's not just the ones that stay on the surface. They tend to stay in it for the networking or whatever they're getting out of it. You know what I'm saying? They fit in with society. But the rest of us, like, when we really believe it, that's when we're the ones that deconstruct. And then you get this, I'm sure you've had it said to you, then you were never a Christian. Have you had that said to you?
That's what people say.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. You really don't understand.
No. Oh gosh. Yeah. I just had it said to me the other day, and I'm like, LOL.
Yeah. Like, do you even know? Yeah.
No, I mean, goodness, it's just, but I mean, I just think people who deconstruct are just some of the most amazing people. Brave, super brave.
You do. I guess that might be a contributing factor as to why it can be so challenging, like so hard to deconstruct. So when I just felt like I changed my mind, like, oh, I'm just not a Christian anymore. But people would talk about how hard and how challenging it is to deconstruct your faith. And I just thought, like, well, how hard can it be? I just changed my mind. Like, I just don't believe that anymore. How hard can it be? But through time, like, it's so crazy to like really feel how hard it is and what you discover as a result of not being a Christian or changing your mind. And so what I thought would just be like, oh, it's an easy decision. I just changed my mind about not being a Christian anymore.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But
because in a way, people think they're deciding to be a Christian, right? They're choosing to be a Christian.
They're chosen.
Okay, they're chosen, but they think they're choosing it. And as a child, I remember hearing when I got up to my teenage years, because I was a Christian for 35 years, and we homeschooled our kids.
I was homeschooled.
Were you? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We homeschooled for like 10 years till our oldest was going into 11th grade. And then she was just like the science. We had been deconstructing, and I was trying to find curriculum that was not Christian, because especially the science and the history is so biased. And I was like, I need something that's less biased. I need, especially the science. It was awful. And she said, Mom, I have got to have something better than this. And she's such a smart kid. And so I was like, well, we're going to have to put you in public school. And that's what she wanted. And then we started to put them in at high school level as they got to that age. And then with the two youngest, it was like middle school, actually the youngest, 4th grade, I think, 5th grade.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, you're going to get a better education, and I want to do other things than teach you.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Go. You'll be fine.
And they've all done great, but it was, we were doing all the things, trying to make sure it was, our kids turned out it's just, life doesn't work that way. Just all the promises they give you that they'll just be so perfect. And it's just, life is just messy. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to challenge you, and it's not supposed to be this nice little neat box. And our marriage, after deconstructing or going through deconstruction, it just radically changed it, because we stopped trying to fit a mold that was made for us that we were not made to fit. It's deconstruction. It just affects every single area of your life. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah. Just mentally, it's challenging because you're not being spoon fed your beliefs and how to act. And this is what you need to be. This is what you need to do. Now you got to go out and find, who am I? What am I? We had a guest on in early December, and he was an ex-pastor that deconstructed. And he said, it was like, do I like pumpkin pie anymore? He had to go out and find the simple things in life of, do I even like this? Or is this just because I was told I was supposed to like pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving time? And just reprogramming everything in your life and redefining of, this is who I am. This is what I get to be. What do I like? What do I don't like? Not what I'm being told to like. And that's tough work, because it's easy to be in a system where, all right, you're a man. This is what you are. You got to provide for the family. You got to like all the sports. You got to, raise tough kids and this and that. And, oh, you're a mom. So you're going to be nurturing. You're going to stay at home. You're going to cook dinner. You're going to clean the house. That's not how humanity is. We're all unique. We're all individual. We're all supposed to be our own things, but that's tough to figure out on your own. And at least that's what I found to be one of the tougher parts of the whole thing, is just trying to figure out, who am I? What am I? What do I like? What do I want? And all that. So, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's like the question now is, am I seeing this through a Christian filter? Like, oh, I got to be modest because I was taught that growing up, and oh, I can't do this because that's not approved by Christianity. And so now, like, that's what I feel is my deconstruction work, is like everything that comes up, that's like, oh, that's what I thought when I was a Christian. But what do I think?
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, that's the deconstructing that I need to do.
Yep.
Like when I have a really strong compulsion or a like disdain for something because that's how I thought when I was a Christian, I'm like, oh, I probably need to deconstruct that. Like, what do I think about that? How do I feel about that? Not that's what I was taught or told.
Yeah. Or that's just the way it is. That's the way everybody thinks. Or, I've heard people say that, and I'm like, no, this is where you go, why do I think that? And it gives you constantly have things that you could deconstruct. You just kind of like, well, I'm going to have to deconstruct this at some point, like I got a hang up there. There's something going on there, and, put a pin in it. Like I'm going to have to work on and then life just naturally brings you experiences to help you kind of work through it, so you can figure out what it is that works for you. And not all of us fall in the same space. We like different things. We believe different things. And that is the beauty, I think, of the deconstruction community. For the most part, we found that people they're open and they're just accepting. As long as you're not trying to push what you have and say, you have to believe this or you're going to a hell. I mean, it's like, hey, let's talk about what you believe. And maybe I like some of it, maybe I don't, but I'm open to hearing it, and I think that's how another thing in the deconstruction community is we hear one another, we learn from each other. There's not just one person telling everybody what to think,
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's on an equal plane there.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter race, gender, creed,
or even how long you've been deconstructing.
Yeah.
I've had people who are just started to deconstruct and they'll say something to me and I'll go, I have never thought about that. Like it'll hit me a certain way and I'll be like, that's very interesting. So it's like, we're all learning from each other. There's it's level.
Yeah, it can feel scary-ish. And I've felt like I've been trepidatious around some things. So I'm open. I also just feel like hesitant. I still have fear. So I started with conversations with God. I was open to hearing what he had to say, and he talked about things like higher evolved beings. And I was like, do we believe that? I'm like, is that a thing? No, I feel kind of crazy, but I don't know. So I've just kind of taken the stance of, I don't know, but I can't say that I didn't hear it. Like I heard this 100% through and through, book 4, like all the I heard it. I can't say. I just have decided to say, I don't know. Like I don't know the whole entire universe. I haven't, I feel more open. So I just started listening to Raw, the book of the Law of One by Raw.
Yes.
Is this okay that I'm listening to this? And I feel kind of crazy. I don't know. I don't know.
You're going to feel crazy. That's okay.
I even had a what's it called? A psychic reading. I was like, oh, I got a psychic reading. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
We had
so new. I'm exploring all these things.
Yes.
We've had him on our show. Alicia, it's been on 3 times. She gave us a tarot reading the first time, did a mediumship sit-in with us where we pulled up my grandma's and our brother-in-law.
And my grandma.
And your grandma. And then another one she was on, she did another tarot reading for us. So, and it's all this stuff. It's like,
we were skeptical with the medium stuff, but she convinced us. Like I was like, there is something going on there because there's no way she would have known the stuff that she said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and we were shamed for even my family would be like, what are you know what I'm saying? Like most of them would be like, that's dangerous. And then you have the other side. Yeah. Outside of that, the scientific community would say that's woo, it's bad, or it's silly. You know what I'm saying? And to me, if they're both saying that, I'm like, I'm a little curious what's going on here.
Yeah, we're the happy middle.
Yeah.
Let's just, and you can test it instead of in Christianity, it was just like, no, that's bad. I'm not even going to look at it. But now you can go, well, I don't know. Maybe.
Right. I'm learning to feel. Like, how do I feel about this?
Yes.
Am I just afraid because I've been indoctrinated, or what am I sensing? It's a totally different ball game, like using your brain.
Yes. Yeah. And you're actually having to listen to your body. Your body, is your subconscious. It's talking to you and you're having to go, what does this feel like? How do I feel about this? And if you feel fear, am I really afraid? Is it from programming, or is there something really I need to be afraid of here? And you're having to actually use your brain. And that is not something I've done a post on that before. It's just lazy thinking in Christianity. They tell you what to think. They don't tell you how. It's just believe this, you're good, and if you don't believe it, it's not good for you.
Yeah. That's like the definition of brainwashing.
Yes. That's true. So we were kind of all brainwashed, but
yeah. So on your journey, since it's, let's see, 5 months now, how has that been going for you? Just, I mean, we kind of touched on a little bit, but is there any specifics you want to get into on what was been eye-opening, what's been challenging, anything like that?
Or anything you want to kind of work through or any of it?
Yeah. So I feel like for me, the changes for me, like, when like,
Mhm.
I know what I know. I'm so completely sold, like a
Mhm.
bazillion percent. You can't talk me down. And now to try to communicate that, it's like, now to talk to people, you have to use rationality and like think through and explain everything. It's like you're trying to explain your reasonings, but that bypasses like the spirit of it, because I know in my gut. But
Yeah.
how do you explain that to somebody? And they're hearing you from their point of view and with their filter. And so now it's like, okay, not only am I having a hard time communicating how I feel because I heard something that changed my mind and it makes sense to me.
Yep.
Not only am I trying to do that, like communicate, but now they're listening to it from a Christian standpoint. And I think I said this in a TikTok video too. Like, I knew what it was like to defend my faith and to be an apologist and like work
Yeah.
through all the arguments and like everything that could come against Christianity. You're supposed to know in and out how to defend the faith and all
You
things.
know the
Now,
answers. Yes.
yes, now that I'm like on the other side trying to talk to a Christian, I'm like, God darn it, they're using all the tactics against me. Like, this is not
Yes.
gonna work. Like, I am not going to get through to this person. They don't understand. Like, they can't understand. And like, part of me is not there for it. Like, I'm not here for it. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to convince you. If you aren't hearing me, I'm going to quit talking. Like,
Yes,
you
exactly.
are not listening. You just want to hear what you have to say about what I am saying. And I'm not here, like, it's okay. I know what I believe, and I actually respect what you believe,
Yes.
and I don't have to fight you or change your mind.
Yes.
I love that for you, and that's okay. But what I've kind of sensed so far from people in my life is like, I understand that they're hearing what I say, but then they're trying to Christianize it and be like, well, the Bible says this, and this verse says that, and Jesus says this, and all these things. I'm like, you are not hearing me. You're not feeling what I'm trying to explain to you.
Yeah.
Like, I literally feel saved. Like, I feel born again. Like,
Yes,
it's the
exactly.
most real, genuine feeling. I've never felt that before.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's like, I know 100% how I feel and still figuring out what I believe and what I think about things, because I still have questions myself. And so part of me is like kind of maybe nervous or like hesitant to really be open and share like not everything, but a lot of my changes. I have been public like on Facebook, which all my family like sees me on Facebook. I've said I'm not a Christian anymore. Like, but that's kind of the extent.
I still haven't even done that. I mean, I've posted things. I think they know, but that's pretty brave.
They know.
Okay.
Yeah.
They do probably know. But I have never said like I'm not a Christian. I don't have it on my profile or anything, but I just started social media separate from all of them pretty much because Facebook was where they were at and Instagram. So I just started a private account and that it was not connected necessarily to my other one.
Yeah.
But
that's crossed my mind. Like, I've thought about starting fresh because there's just so many ties and people and connections, but at the same time, I kind of want to just be the real me, like be authentic instead of starting over and like scrapping my Facebook account or Instagram. Like, I want people to know the truth about me and like who I am. And so I do want to be open and public about it. And like, if people disagree, like that's their problem. It's not mine. So
that's a tough lesson to learn.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You're learning it so early. I mean, because it took me it was when I started on TikTok, when I started to be more just showing my face, saying what I needed to say. And then Facebook. I didn't start posting in there. It did help though. Some people private messaged me that were kind of going through some things, but most of them are evangelical still. But
I think
it's sometimes you need to be authentic so that you will help them. We can't see each other if we're not out there. You know what I'm saying? But we also have to build up the courage to be able to do that. Because some people, they're just not at a space where they can do it.
It's that whole thing. I said on a few posts and stuff that I didn't truly become a Christian until I left the church and deconstructed Christianity. Because when you become that bright light, it's different out there. That people are going to look and be like, and it's going to speak to some individuals. And that's all that needs to receive it are the ones that are, if they have ears, let them hear, And like you said, most of the Christians are going to come back because all the defenses. You've used all the defenses yourself, and tried to defeat people in these. And we found that early on when, Candy's family's evangelical, mine's Catholic. Mine's Catholic and very surface level. We don't talk about anything. But Candy's family talks a lot and everything's very faith-centric.
Yeah.
So when we started deconstruction, she kind of dropped a bomb on them on it. And from that point on, it always seemed like the conversations were, okay, we need to prove Dan and Candy wrong and show where they're wrong and how they're thinking because they've fallen away.
Well, and we weren't even saying that we weren't Christian. We were just saying, hey, did you guys know that the temple was destroyed in 70 AD? Because that's kind of a big deal that nobody ever talks about. Nobody told us about. Like maybe Revelation is talking about, it talks about a temple. There's no temple now, but there was one that got destroyed. Like could they be connected? And, all of that just blew. I mean, there was literal like yelling, crying, screaming at me. It was bad. So there was a lot of trauma at that moment to kind of pull away. I still talk to my family now, but for a while there, it was not pleasant.
She comes from a very emotionally expressive family.
Oh, yeah. But so it's, when you were saying feeling born again, that is like,
yes,
it does feel like you're born. I feel like that life was a whole different person. Like new life and all the things that you were promised, the fruits of the spirit, like love, joy, peace, but all those things have grown exponentially as I've left and been deconstructing this stuff. I have the things Jesus promised and I'm not in it anymore. So sometimes I'll say that to them, like, how do you explain those things growing and and they can see that I'm still loving and kind and even more so, but they still can't leave that idea because there's fear of what that would mean,
Yeah, it's the fear of hell.
Yeah.
So, but what was I forgot. Continue on.
So how I would ask something. How has your parents been? Do they do you still talk or how is that going?
Yeah, so it never really came up around Christmas. We were home for Christmas, and I know that I had mentioned on social media even before Christmas, like I don't call myself a Christian anymore, and I don't resonate with the Christian faith anymore, and things like that. But it never came up, so I don't know how my mom feels or what she thinks. I'm not trying to make judgments myself either, because I'll think, oh, this person might think this about me. Mm-hmm. This person might feel this way. This person probably thinks I'm crazy or I'm wrong or but I just try to catch myself when I think I'm getting in other people's heads, and I'm like, you know what? Let's wait until we cross that bridge. I don't know, because we haven't even said words yet. So I do want to be open and honest and public about my changes and what I'm finding. And sometimes I feel crazy and this is what I'm learning, so that my family sees, and it's not hey, surprise, next time I go home, hey. But so I guess I haven't really navigated those waters yet with.
Okay. I mean, that's one of the things too in deconstruction is you're kind of in this uncomfortable. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because that never really goes away. But it just means you're growing. Because if you think of a kid when they're growing up, they have growing pains. They're uncomfortable. It doesn't feel, they're uncomfortable in their body and stuff. And I think being like, we're not super uncomfortable all the time, but we know that we're different than most of the people around us. We already know that we're in this space that we don't have certainty anymore. It's gone. Now you have this feels right. It resonates with me, but I cannot say like, I'm at the point now where I think reincarnation is a real thing. I think there's a lot of evidence for it. I think it's actually beautiful in the way that I understand it. It's way better than a heaven or a hell. Like there's a lot of beauty in it. And it also makes you make different decisions while you're here. Cause I don't know, they could affect you later if you come back around. But I think I can't say for sure, but when I was a Christian, I thought absolutely 100% there's a heaven and there's a hell and you're going to one of them, and I didn't know that for sure, but I acted like it.
Yeah, I think what I'm finding, like at first I felt like, oh, I'm losing credibility. I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm losing so much credibility. Like, but I think what that is me and a Christian, like one of us thinks the other is wrong, or like that's how it feels.
Yeah.
If I come out and say, I'm not a Christian, I don't believe Christianity anymore, a Christian, maybe somebody in my family or something is like, you're probably wrong. But if I'm not wrong, then that means they're wrong. And like that's the thing is a Christian can't stand the idea of being wrong about their faith or about what they believe, but they're also not willing to explore if they are.
Yeah, that is the problem.
It's like, I only want to stay indoctrinated. I only want to stay fed these beliefs that have been taught to me all of my life. And that's the scary part is being willing to look at, well, what else is out there? And I've had so much fun learning what else is out there. Like, oh, I would have missed all of this if I just lived in my little Christian world the rest of my life. Like there's so much amazing, incredible things. Life just would have been like, no, absolutely not too.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's so true.
That's the heaven and hell part, because if you stepped out of the pre-described bubble that we're in, that's dangerous. That's Satan. That's going to lead you to hell. And there's no protection. You're outside of the umbrella of God now. So there's no protection and you're going to be destined for hell. So to stay away from that, don't look outside there, which is one of the characteristics of the cult. Everyone on the outside of the cult is trying to influence you to leave the cult because they want to pull you away from the truth. And we have the absolute truth here. But there's so much more stuff out there to explore and understand and learn about this world that there is some validity to as you see it, but it's going to shake the core of your Christian belief, and the church knows this. So they have to put up that bubble to protect their own interest and their own investment in the people, prevent them from going out and exploring the world, because that is what's going to destroy everyone's faith once they step outside of it.
When you're on the outside, when you're exploring, like you were talking about, Katie, which it does make, because, we're 12 years out, like adult life is so much more enjoyable than our friends and stuff that are still in Christianity. Their lives look the same as they did 10 years ago. And, they're not really growing. They read the same.
Yeah.
You read the same books. You just reinforce what you already believe. Like you said, that you don't explore. So you don't grow. You just are real stagnant. So to me, I always think of the verse where I think it is in Revelation where it talks about lukewarm. And I always thought lukewarm was you're not going out and preaching Jesus at people. But lukewarm is just like water that's hot does something to like maybe if you're ill or you're cold, it warms you up. Water that's cool. If you're hot, it'll cool you down. It's refreshing. Lukewarm water is nasty. It does not do anything. That's what
the bath you want to get out of.
Yes, exactly. And so when you get out, it's almost like, and I understand the need for religion, because I really feel like religion is kind of just like training wheels to kind of know, hey, there might be something that's bigger than you. There might be something. I know some people would say, no, there's no need for it, but it does do some, is some good that it does do.
I agree.
You take it away from people, it could be devastating. They need to naturally kind of grow past it. I think we've just matured past it. It doesn't fit anymore. It's clothes that don't fit. I mean, there's no way I could go back to being a Christian. I would have to be pretending, and that would be miserable, So it's hell, really. I really feel like we came out of hell and stepped into more of a heaven-like space where it doesn't mean everything goes beautifully, because it doesn't, but you learn how to listen to yourself, to navigate in the world in a new way. You're constantly learning and challenging yourself. I don't know. There's just so much beauty in deconstruction, and yet it is feared. It is so feared because of it is a slippery slope. You start down the slide, but it's fun.
Yeah. It's a fun slide.
It's a fun slide. I mean, they weren't wrong when they were saying, like, if you go here, you're going to go down that slippery slope. But why is the faith so weak that any challenge to it can break it? If it really is of God, it should be able to handle any type of scrutiny and hold up.
Yeah, I think like what you're saying about religion, there is like all of the faiths, all of the religions, they all play a valuable role in humanity, in society. They are like training wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful for my time as a Christian. Like I think I wouldn't know about God or have a relationship with God if I weren't a Christian. Like I don't know how I would be like, but I think Christianity was a role that needed to have a part in my life as part of my spiritual evolution. And I am thankful and grateful for that.
Yeah.
Even if I was still a Christian for 20 more years, it had a purpose.
Yes. Yeah.
In knowing God and being spiritual and open to spiritual things. It was part of my evolution. But you're right, there is also a time where religion just serves a purpose for a period of time. It's not meant to be your whole entire life. You are to evolve and continue to grow spiritually, which is not a thing that religion can do for you or provide for you. You have to grow yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And religions, at least for sure, monotheistic religions, it's a box. You stay in this box. And if you have to stay in a box, you cannot grow past the edges of it. And we all know there's certain things you just cannot believe and still consider yourself a Christian, because nobody else is going to say you're a Christian if you believe that. So it's I guess necessary in some sense. I mean, I just understand why it came into play, and it did serve a purpose. I don't think I would be enjoying adult life as much if I wasn't deconstructing from it, because now I know what it feels like to be kind of trapped. And I also know what it feels like to be free. And it's so rewarding to feel free, because I know what it felt like to not be free, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't even know what you guys have learned or consumed, or where you're at on a spiritual journey. But it's once you know the truth about how the world works and about God and about spirit and everybody, how we're all connected and there is no hell and we're all going to go back to God. And you feel free.
Yes.
You can't do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't mess up. The universe is benevolent. Like,
Yes.
you cannot get it wrong. I don't care if you've had an abortion.
Yes.
Like,
yes. That was part of your experience to learn and grow and change. And you didn't, there's not a baby in heaven that's just sitting there like, you ruined my, it's like, that's not happening.
No. It does. You just feel more free to live your life. You're not like bound and shackled and chained. Like, I can't sin knowingly. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm a terrible person. If I know that I'm doing wrong, heaven forbid, like, you just, you live more freely and openly.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've never experienced happiness like I ever have before.
Exactly.
I'm more happy. Sometimes out of nowhere, out of the blue, I'll be like, oh my God, I can never be happier than how I am right now. I'm so freaking happy. Like, dude, I'll just be doing the most menial thing. And I'm like, I cannot get any happier than this. Like, wow, this is amazing. Oh my gosh, this is just everything.
Yes.
When you know the truth, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I'm awake. I'm now.
Exactly.
You're woke.
You're woke.
I know. Oh my gosh.
But to kind of answer your question on where we are, I think kind of ties into that, because Katie and I kind of both believe there's this one universal source, power, whatever. I think that religion associates to God or Allah or whatever. But there's this one singular thing that we're all kind of tied to, that we are all extensions of, almost like it broke itself into a billion pieces because it didn't have the ability to experience Earth in a way that a human could experience through sight, touch, smell, taste, and all that, and emotional things. So for it to get the full experience and grasp, it broke itself up into this, and that's what we are. So when we go out into the world and experience it through the painful experiences, the happy experiences, the joyous, and all this, it's absorbing this as part of the collective.
It's gaining information too, of like, oh, that's what that experience feels like in that body with this personality and this situation. It's just gaining and growing and evolving itself in a way. I mean, and I'll do it like a shameless plug. I have a podcast called The Transformed Life, where I'm going through the 12 universal spiritual laws, and the law of oneness is the very first one. And what I talk about in there is, it's a way of kind of understanding, if you think of the sun as the source, so the original source, and if you have a pyramid and you shine the sun's rays, that single source hits that pyramid, it just shatters into all those different angles. And that's us. Prism. What did I say?
Pyramid.
That would be confusing. Prism. Okay, so it just breaks off into all those different rays of light, but they all came from the one source. They're all part of that one source.
Yeah.
And so we are the source, but we're also the rays of light that are connected. So we're just all connected. It's all connected, and there's no way to separate it. And so then that leads into other laws like vibration and attraction and all these things. These things make sense, and they make sense in the physical world. And now we're just kind of moving that same idea over and understanding the metaphysical world, to which I think the physical world is just a reflection of. But it's fascinating stuff. I'm just treating it as a science experiment. Like, let's just see if some of this stuff holds true. Does the law of attraction, is it really, when I pay attention to my vibe, where my energy is at, does it make a difference in my day? Does it make a difference in what comes my way that I'm open to? And it does. It really does.
Yeah. And like, when you talk about, when you learn how we're all one, we're a part of God, we are an extension of God. Like, Christianity would not teach that we are God. Like, whoa, that's blasphemy. But like, the more I learn of things that Christianity doesn't teach, like, the more I see how some things that Christianity teaches is not helpful and can actually be harmful. Like, so as I learn the law of one and how we are all one, we're all a part of God. We are all God.
Yes.
Do you bet I see people differently? Like, I have experienced a love for people that I have never experienced before as a Christian. I love people because
People.
I know they're me and I'm them and they are God.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm
Yep.
so happy to meet you. Like, you're so amazing. Let's have fun. I love you. Like,
Yeah.
I work as a cashier on the weekends and I'll like be ringing up people's groceries and every person I'm just like, I'm so excited to meet you and who are you? And I love you. Like, oh my God. Like, but as a Christian, it's like, I love you if you love God and I love you
Yes.
doing the right things. And do you know God? And do you know you're a sinner? And there's like all these conditions and stipulations.
Yep.
If I can love you, like, are you gay? Are you straight? What's your label? Who are you? Can I love you? I can only love you if we agree on the same
Yeah.
thing and if we're on the same page. Like, now I'm like, I don't care about any of that stuff
Yes.
because none of that matters. I literally, like, no matter where you are on the spectrum, on the scale, like homeless, rich,
Yeah.
I don't care. You're a person, you're God, you're me, I'm you. We're all
Yeah.
one and I love you and it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Amen. But what's funny about that is I had a thought that I was going to share about, like you are practicing unconditional love, which we were told to have. We were told God has, which we do because we're a piece of God too. It's all, like, I mean, that's natural to love. Like babies come in loving whatever they see.
Yeah.
They notice differences that they might look and stare at something that looks different than what they've seen before. So it can program, and then but they don't like not love somebody. I've seen like where a person with a scary looking mask comes up to a baby, a little baby, and the baby they're just kind of like, huh.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as scared of it. They're just like, until they get a little older and they've kind of been programmed a little bit to be afraid of those things, they just are like, just staring, learning, but it's just neat. You're practicing, and that vibe that you're putting out when you're, checking people through, that is having a ripple effect. It is affecting those people, whether you know it or not, whether they know it or not, it is rippling out. So, what more beautiful thing could you do for somebody while you're checking them through, but lift their mood a little bit.
Send the love vibes.
Yes.
But that's where, because Candy's light source, where we'll get a little scientific, the power of the ray, you can use lasers to cut things. But when you shoot it through a prism, it breaks up into individual pieces. But if you get them individual pieces to work together through pushing out a certain vibe and come and bring it back together, there's extreme power in that.
That's true.
And you can see that affect real change in the world through that, not through elections or donations or anything like this, but just the energies that we're putting out in the world and how much that can really affect how the world could change for the better and the good and for the communal good. What everyone that's so different and apart and unique and individual can have this common thing that they work for with maybe not even knowing this is what the good is, but that vibe will take them to it. So, I mean, it's just a good analogy on that light source going through of the power behind it if it works together.
And that's something I really want to help people understand too, is like, we're not dependent on what the government's doing. We're not dependent on that. Like, we came from Christianity where we're told God's in control. So you feel like you have very little control over what's happening, right? And you would give God the credit when it was something you felt was pleasant. If it was terrible, it was your fault. You did something wrong. You're a sinner, right? Or the devil got his hands in there somehow because God wasn't able to stop. I don't know what.
Right. Yeah.
But now being outside of that, I hear the voices that are saying, like, if the government, it's so scary and there's just so much fear and it's like, no, guys, we have the power inside us. We have to stop looking outside of us. And when we can come together, the more of us that come together that understand this one, that we are one with one another, that our vibration makes a difference. How I take care of, how I love myself, which in Christianity was considered selfish. When I actually take care of myself and really love myself, it will overflow out towards you, towards Dan. It will just flow out naturally. And then they will take that. It will just ripple out more love And the more we can get of us doing that, it'll be like that laser. It will change the world, but we have to get ourselves to that space. And I can't get you to do it. You can't get your parents to do it. And I think I was going to say something back when you were talking about when you're talking to family members or friends who are Christian, some of that is residual from being evangelical, where you have to share your faith. You don't have to share your faith you just have to live your faith. You just have to live it. And when you live it, the reason you're not feeling real comfortable with sharing it, and you can't really put this into words, it takes so long to learn how to just shape some words around it, because it's bigger than it's just not really containable in words.
Yeah.
So when you're feeling that urge to share, because I had that too, like, okay, I got to tell them like what I do believe. No, you don't. You can explain if you want to, but if you feel like it's draining you, like then it's going nowhere, and it might even hurt the relationship to share it. It's just like, but you have to fill that out. But I think sometimes evangelical training was share your faith. You know what I'm saying?
True. Yeah. And I feel like I've just gotten to a place in my new understanding of like, it's not about explaining or convincing either. Like, you're free to believe whatever you want, because you can't do it wrong. You can't believe the wrong thing, because we're all going to go back to God.
Exactly.
Whether you think you're going to hell or whatever, that's okay. That's fine. I don't need to convince you otherwise. I know what I believe.
Because you're not sitting here thinking they're going to burn in hell. So you don't have that pressure.
No.
Yeah. They might be thinking that. And to me, it's okay if they think I'm going to hell, because I know I'm not. The only thing that bothers me is it is sad that they think that about me, because I know that probably makes them feel sad, but I can't do anything about that. I cannot make them believe that there's no hell. It does sadden me that they are like, especially my parents, like, oh, if they think about it, like, she's not going to be with us in heaven. But I'm like, you might be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
So, man, it's just, you're in a good space.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun. And we've been on it for a little bit farther down the road than you, but we're still, as you can see, we're still learning and learning from you, it doesn't get old.
Yeah. And there's always new challenges, because there'll come up something where it's like, why do I feel like this today? Why am I upset with myself? And it's like, can't even be like, well, that's old programming in you. That's something that you're getting called up to deal with at this moment now
or deconstructing to do.
Yeah. So there's always something new that pops up. It's like, oh, yeah. Okay, now I got to deal with this. That's still residual from that old mindset that I still need to do. So it's constantly, I don't think it ever ends.
I don't think
but that's part of the growth. That's part of the fun. That's part of the challenge to now we get to change it and reprogram it to something more suitable to me.
Yeah, that's encouraging, because for a while I thought like I might go back to being a Christian. Like, I might find something that'll be like, oh, I was wrong, I'm going to go back and be a Christian now. But I'm like still waiting for that to happen, or not waiting. Like, that's how I felt at first. Like, I'm willing to declaim Christianity right now, but I could, through my research and my learning, come to the conclusion that Christianity is really the right faith, and I could just like go back to that, but that hasn't happened yet. So
yeah,
I had that too. I still will say, if someone could convince me, but they'd have to convince me with like, there'd have to be some sort of
that God isn't who he says he is.
Yeah. I mean,
that's not going to happen. So.
No, it's not. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I'm trying to think. I don't think anybody's deconstructed really well and gone back. They might early deconstruction, where they call it deconstruction, but they don't get to the point of not saying they're not a Christian. They would just be like, oh, maybe I think, you can baptize babies.
I have one example. There's a guy that was extremely anti-Christian, deconstructed, fell out. but he had something happen in his family. It was a family emergency. And something resonated with him through prayer or whatever that pulled him back into the faith.
Did he go all the way back into Christianity?
I haven't heard from him since he made that announcement. That was about a year ago. But that's the only example I can think of. But again, there's no harm in that either. That's
No.
he's on. So, okay, this made sense now. Everyone came together in a prayer circle and prayed over this person that was dying, and
they got better
They got
or
better.
whatever. Yeah.
so that's going to speak to that individual. So I can't fault them for that or whatever
No.
they do, but I don't think I think once you start exploring and start seeing, like you have said earlier, through Dispenza and conversations with God and all this, it's like this stuff really resonates. This stuff makes too much sense, where everything I was taught and was fed doesn't hold water compared to what I'm learning now. And I'm trying to weigh them together. This one's got a lot more weight to it, and you're going to keep finding that as you keep going down the path. There's things that just click with us all the time of, did you ever think about this? And then usually Candy's like, yeah, about 4 months ago. I've been waiting for you to get
way ahead of you.
Sometimes I don't tell you. I'm just like, yeah, wow.
Good job.
Or it'll be something I've told him several times, but he just could not. And that happens to me. Sometimes I'll read a book, like a spiritual book, and I'll be like, this is above my understanding right now. So I'll put it aside, and then I'll come back to it maybe a few months later, and I'll be like, I understand.
That's happened to me. Yeah.
It's kind of a nice experience when okay, I'm in over my head. I can't understand what they're saying. I'm not grasping it. Put it away. And then you just live a little bit more life. And then you're like, now I get it, and it's, you just have those enlightening moments often.
I think maybe one thing to kind of wrap this up here is, in this whole journey, some of the things that Candy and I have found too is how much, we don't hold the Bible as this word of God, this holy, in evangelicalism, it's almost like an idol upon itself.
Yes.
Don't talk against it. But in our deconstruction and learning about all these other things in the world, we can go back into Jesus's ministry and be like, this is like Joe Dispenza 1.0. If you look at how he taught, what he was teaching, it's not this religious system of, here's some rules, follow these rules. It's, here's the universe and here's how it works. And here's how you're meant to plug into it and operate within this to fully experience everything and get the full power of it. You are sons of God. So he was like one of these original spiritualists that's talking. And you see this when you look back at it and be like, okay, so the Bible, it's not this revelation of God, but there's some valuable stuff in there in the stories that are told that can be,
there's some revelation in it that you can pull from it. You can also pull a lot of garbage out of it too. And to me, it's kind of like this. I kind of think of it as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I think there's a lot of places that are, because it holds both. You can go to it, you can find evil and you can find good. It just depends on how you want to, it's a rightly dividing the word of truth. These are all scripture verses that I just see very differently, like rightly divide it. What is garbage and where's the good stuff? Is there good stuff in here? Take it out. Do that with everything you read, every person. I mean, in Christianity, it was, if you were talking to, this is what would happen with me. If I was talking with someone and let's say they said a swear word, all of a sudden, everything they say after that, I'm just shut down because I hear the swear word and they're not a Christian. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of throw out everything. You're not listening. Whereas now, even in evangelical, I will listen to see, like, is there some truth in what they're saying? There's some truth sometimes, and it's mixed in with other things. And I think that's the same with everything. Like, I used to open a book, and if it wasn't written by a Christian, well, it's probably full of a bunch of garbage. You know what I'm saying?
Now I'm like the opposite. Oh, it's a Christian.
Exactly. That is definitely true. It's written by a Christian. Oh, I'm skeptical of what's in there. Oh, that's funny. That is true. But it's like, I'm now to a place where I'm like, okay, there might be something I can pull from this, But it's just really having discernment. And then you learn how to be around anybody and see if there's some truth you can take from the conversation that actually resonates with you. And if they say nothing that's good or wholesome or that resonates, you can at least use that as contrast to help you understand your world a little bit better, So there's good everywhere, really. But we were told before that only certain people had the good, and now it's all mixed together, and you've got to sort it out. You got to think.
Yeah, everything's good or bad. Just depends on how you want to look at it. It's in Christendom, we're taught everything's black and white. It's either all good or all bad. And in reality, as you've probably realized here, everything's all gray.
It's all just mixed together.
And you got to figure out, is this good in this situation? Is this good in this situation or bad in this situation? And it can change the next day depending on the circumstances involved.
And it's really not even good and bad, because actually in Genesis, the words were, is it beneficial or is it unbeneficial? Yeah. Like, is this going to benefit me and those around me, or is it going to not benefit me and those around me? And if you can, that's super helpful, because sometimes, like just even taking an abortion, sometimes an abortion is beneficial in the situation. Sometimes it's not beneficial in a situation. It really depends on the person, the time, the place, all of that. And it's up to that person to make that decision, and there's no judgment on it. It's just where they felt like was beneficial to them. Yeah. So it's so freeing. And when you stop doing that to yourself, you automatically stop judging others. You're just like, well, I'm not living your life. That's your life to live. So
it's like you're free to love.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is going to be in the description of the podcast.
Free to love.
Candy writes the copy for the podcast. So, well, thank you for coming on tonight, Katie. It's been a lovely journey.
Yes.
Is there anything you'd want to promote before we turn you loose tonight?
Well, I would promote my TikTok, but I guess that's going away potentially. So check out my website. That's where you'll find my podcast. We can connect on Instagram. On my TikTok today, I was like, I have an email. I have an email. You can join my email list, I guess. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about my experience and share what it's been like to not be a Christian anymore. And I just want to be encouraging to others who might be on the same journey and like questioning everything or finding it challenging to navigate what it's like to not be a Christian and figure out what you believe and decide for yourself things, and just go for it. Just do it. You can't do it wrong.
Yes, you can't do it wrong. Okay, do you want to give us, I know we'll put it in the description of the podcast, but you have abundantafter.abortion.com, is that right?
It's like a little bio site thing.
Oh yeah,
it's not .com. Yeah.
So, okay, I'll put that down there. I see what it is. Okay, and then just go ahead and give your TikTok just in case.
Yeah.
It's Abundant After Abortion.
Abundant After Abortion. And then do you want to say your email?
Or no?
Or
it's
no?
Up to you.
Well, they can get on my email list through, you have to like sign up for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Got it.
Okay.
Abundant After Abortion. Okay. And then what is your Instagram? Is it Abundant After Abortion too?
You got it.
All right.
Do you do a podcast?
It's Abundant After Abortion podcast.
Very good. One name.
Yeah.
That's very, very nice.
Concise.
So yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then for us, just remember, go to danandcan.com for all the things related to us. It has links to our podcast, links to Candy's podcast, Transformed Life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our store and all that good stuff. Started a YouTube page. Is that on there yet?
I'll get it on there.
It'll be on there sometime when we get to it. So check that out. And as always, remember to give us 5 stars. You give us 5 stars and you will successfully journey through this life. 4 stars or not less. you will be trapped and imprisoned and not be allowed to journey and experience life in this
Oh,
fullest. So
wow.
give us 5 stars and you'll be free like a free bird to fly and flutter around. So yeah, just give us a rating if you can. Katie, it was lovely having you on.
Yes.
Appreciate it greatly. Thank you. Hopefully, I know we gleaned some good information from it, and hopefully you did too.
It's always encouraging to talk to people deconstructing.
Yeah, see people on the path and how they're going, and just come alongside everyone and spread the love.
Spread the love.
Spread the love.
So thank you for coming on. And as always, people, remember,
Listen to us.
we know some shit.
Bye.
Bye.